Welcome. I would like to welcome you to episode 469 of the Unpopular Podcast. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Hunter. Here at the Unpopular Podcast, not only asked to agree with me, I'm asking you to hear me out. What is the definition of an anomaly? What is an anomaly? The definition of an anomaly is something that diverts from what is standard, normal, or expected. That is the definition of an anomaly. Something that diverts from what is standard, normal, or expected. Everything about Lamar Jackson is an anomaly. We have never seen anybody like Lamar Jackson. The complete package of Lamar Jackson, we have never seen. Yes, we've seen people to throw the ball better than Lamar. We've seen people that possibly is a better, you can argue, is better at eluding tackles than Lamar. I would say you're wrong, but that's me. But as an entire package, we have never seen anything like Lamar Jackson. You see, we're going to break down what we saw on Thursday Night Football. And I'm going to give you my takes on how I feel about the Bengals, how I feel about the Ravens moving forward. All that is dandy. But I would be doing you a disservice if I didn't start this episode off with saying that we are seeing one of the greatest anomalies in NFL history in Lamar Jackson. There's a reason why he is favorited to win his third MVP, second consecutive. There's a reason why a lot of people are saying that at this point of his career, an MVP is not, I'm not going to say it's not important, but that's not the standard that his talent, his play warrants, which is crazy. An MVP, he is better than an MVP status. He is a Super Bowl or bust player. While no, I think there's only two players in the NFL that is on that status. One of them is Lamar Jackson. The other one is Patrick Mahomes, the one that has won, 3 Super Bowls. But it's almost glaring. When we watch Thursday Night Football and you see Joe Burrow throw for 428 yards, and you can walk out that stadium or walk out that game and say to yourself, there's nobody like Lamar Jackson. Don't get me wrong. Like I said, I'm going to talk about the game more in depth. But and Joe Burrow played his tail off. I'm not taking away from what Joe Burrow did at all. But the Ravens would not be in this position. They wouldn't be 7-3. They wouldn't be Super Bowl contenders if it wasn't for Lamar Jackson. It feels like every single game, Lamar Jackson does something that not only confirms why he is the MVP this year, but confirms why he is the anomaly to the NFL. Whether it's eluding defenders, running back 20 yards to gain 10, and not be touched. The fact that he continues to improve year after year after year, like drastically improve. We have never seen anyone like Lamar, and honestly, I don't think we ever will. That's no offense to Someone like Jaden Smith or Jaden Daniel, I'm sorry. Someone that they compare Lamar Jackson to a lot. Or, yeah, they compare him to Lamar Jackson. This is something. Lamar Jackson is something unheard of. And the thing about Anomalies is that not only does it divert from the norm, but a lot of times it's hard to quantify. It's hard to quantify what exactly we're watching, how exactly impactful it is, how this has come to be. And I know, so whether there's two sides of the coin for everything. You can be a person that says, well, with all that success, with the MVPs, getting to the AFC Championship last year, still not being able to get over the hump. All that is true. And that has been the only, I will repeat, that has been the only hindrance and only hesitation to Lamar Jackson's game, is the fact that he has been unable to beat Patrick Mahomes, or he's been unable to get to the Super Bowl. Like I said, there are standards. And he is on a standard that not many other people are on. Or you can be on the side of the coin saying, well, while that is true, Lamar Jackson still would be, I think, he'll be one of two players in the NFL that has more than three or more MVPs. One of them is Aaron Rodgers. One of them would be Lamar Jackson. He would have taken a team that has arguably, we'll talk about it more in a second, but arguably one of the worst pass defenses we have ever seen, to heights that they should not reach. That is because Lamar Jackson is who Lamar Jackson is. He is the biggest anomaly in the NFL. And I got heat for it, which is fine. Remember, this is obviously my podcast, my opinion. I'm not discrediting yours. I'm just giving you mine. I said that Lamar Jackson, season to season base. Right now, Lamar Jackson is the best player in the NFL. Yes, if we talk about overall, if we talk about, totality, if we're saying if I'm building a team right now and I had the pick of the litter of every player in the league, yes, I'm getting Patrick Mahomes. The totality of what Patrick Mahomes has done, what he is obviously greater than Lamar Jackson. We're talking about a 3-time Super Bowl champion. But if we're talking about season to season base, there has not been a player in this league this year that has played close to how good Lamar Jackson has been. The anomaly in the NFL. So let's advance this conversation and talk about what we saw on Thursday Night Football with the Baltimore Ravens beating the Cincinnati Bengals 35-34. Lamar Jackson threw for 200, or he totaled 290 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Joe Burrow threw for 428 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. I want to talk about the Bengals for a second and then circle back to the Ravens. Let me first say that this is what I was talking about when I was talking to Todd Bowles and the Buccaneers on Monday Night Football, when we were saying, should he have gone for the 2 or should he have went to overtime? Obviously, he went to overtime. The Chiefs won the overtime toss. The Bucs never touched the ball again. Situation and circumstance, understanding it. Now, you can say the Cincinnati Bengals were wrong in going for it after scoring the touchdown, which would have put them up 1 instead of tied the game. And I'm here to say that I understand completely why Zach Taylor went for 2. And I completely support Zach Taylor and the Cincinnati Bengals going for 2 at that moment. Essentially putting the game in their own hands. You have to realize, man, every circumstance and every situation is different. I talked about this last episode. And if you look at this situation, both defenses were struggling mightily. Now, the Cincinnati Bengals did get off to a hot start, sort of. I think it was 7-0, but the time when it got up to 21-7. They had a 14-point lead. The Ravens weren't. The offense wasn't clicking. Defensively, they were having one of those defensive games. Nothing was clicking for them until Marlon Humphreys stripped the ball away from the running back. Turnover, Ravens score, I think, in 2 or 3 or 4 plays after that. That's what got the ball rolling for the Ravens. And once the ball started rolling for the Ravens, it was curtains. That 14-point lead evaporated like that. Neither defenses was stopping the offense. Joe Burrow threw for 428 yards. Jamar Chase caught 11 receptions for 264 yards. So then on top of that, Taylon Wallace had 3 receptions for 115 yards. Lamar Jackson ran for 33 yards. Derrick Henry ran for 68 yards. Nobody was stopping anyone. And you knew that if the Cincinnati Bengals scored the touchdown, which they did, and there was still time left on the clock, the way that the Baltimore Ravens offense was going, they were not stopping that team. They may have stopped them from getting a field goal. I think there was about a minute left, 39 seconds left or something like that. You may have stopped them from getting in field goal range, and we did just witness Justin Tucker miss an extra point earlier in the game. But the thing is, you want to control as much as you can control. You want to keep all the controllables in your hand. And one controllable that you have is, if we give this ball back, we know that we have not been able to stop this offense since that turnover, since they got rolling. We know that our biggest hindrance on this team is the defense. So let me try our hardest to put us in the best situation possible. And the best situation possible for the Cincinnati Bengals was scoring a touchdown, which they did, and going for 2. You can have the Monday morning quarterback. You can have the people talk about, well, it didn't work and they lost the game. Okay. The thing about sports is you're never going to get to where you want to go without taking a risk. You're never going to get to the point that you're trying to get to if you're not ready or willing to risk it all. And what do you think would have been the headline If they would have went for one, the field goal, got it, or not field goal, the extra point, they got it. Then the Ravens march down the field in 40 seconds to get a field goal, or they go into overtime. The Ravens win the overtime toss. They don't score, or the Ravens score, not allowing the Cincinnati Bengals to touch the ball. And the way that game was going, the way how both defenses were struggling, if the Ravens would have won the toss, they would have won the game. Hands down. I know that I'm giving a lot of energy. That's because I'm not upset with Zach Taylor. Zach Taylor, in my opinion, played it right. You go for two. You win. You essentially go for this. We're going to talk about, later in the show, we're going to talk about the 76ers. And there was a play, to win the game. It was against the Suns. And Paul George, he goes for two, which would essentially have tied the game, and they probably would have went into overtime instead of going for the three. And he even said in his post game, I didn't understand the score. If I would have known that we were down two, I would have went for the three. You go for the win every time. That's why I had so much energy and I was so upset with Todd Bowles. You playing it safe lost you the game. The Cincinnati Bengals played to win and they lost. Yes, I understand. But I would do that 10 times out of 10, especially when you see the circumstance and the situation that your team is in. Which let me advance this conversation with the Cincinnati Bengals. I talked about this before, but it's really starting to come into fruition now. Joe Burrow has played like a top 5 quarterback in this league. I owe Joe Burrow an apology. Because I remember a take that I had earlier on this year saying, I don't know how good. A lot of people put Joe Burrow on this pedestal, saying he's the second best quarterback, saying that he is next to Patrick Mahomes. A lot of people put Joe Burrow on this pedestal, on that tier that I believe Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson's in. It's if you don't win a Super Bowl, it's essentially a failure. That's how good people say Joe Burrow has been. And I was pushing back on it, saying, okay, well, hold on. Joe Burrow's only been to one Super Bowl. He's only been to one AFC champion or two AFC championships, essentially, and he ain't been back since. And availability is your best ability. And the fact that Joe Burrow has constantly been hurt or his team's been in situations where they can't overcome, I was a little more critical than I should have been on Joe Burrow. For that, I do apologize because I am not lamenting. I am saying now, I recognize how good Joe Burrow is. Joe Burrow is a top 5 quarterback in this league. I think if you put Joe Burrow behind a competent offensive line, if you put Joe Burrow on a team that has a great defense, you might see more winning. Joe Burrow has been the absolute last issue for this Cincinnati Bengals team. In fact, if there was one thing that you would point to as to positive about this Cincinnati Bengals team, it is the play from Joe Burrow. But with that being said, one thing that this season should teach you is, while yes, the saying is it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. That is absolutely true. But one thing that saying does not incorporate, the one thing that saying doesn't emphasize is how you start could have an effect on how you finish. While you can't win at the starting line, you can't win it at the starting line. You can't win it at the start. You can for damn sure lose it at the start. While this Bengals team has been accustomed at this point to starting off slow, starting season slow. That's just what they do. That's their calling card. Cool. The issue with that is you're essentially taking your controllables out of your hand in the NFL. Joe Burrow is way too good to not be in the playoffs. Jamar Chase, this team, back up. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Burrow, way too good to not be in the playoffs. And right now, Thursday night football game essentially put them in a tough situation. While they don't have the toughest schedule, they don't have the easiest schedule. And they essentially have to win out. Meaning they have to essentially go 7-0 and hope that someone like the Steelers, who they have to play twice, can knock off the Ravens. Hopefully that someone like the Chargers, who they also have to play, can knock off the Ravens. You see, this Bengals team shouldn't be in this spot. I know it's any given Sunday, but when you start, 0-3, essentially 1-4, you're essentially dooming yourself at the end. Because it's going to take a miracle now. This was the game. This was the Bengals' essential Super Bowl. Not because it was against the Ravens, but because if they won this game, this is probably the hardest game they had moving forward. They've already lost to the Ravens before, so now they got swept in the season. So if we talk about tiebreakers, they don't have that. Which means that they're essentially going to have to win out. It's not it's not Joe Burrow's fault. Joe Burrow has been the bright light of this. Jamar Chase has been the bright light of this team. But you're looking now, that, in my opinion, that was their Super Bowl. They can ultimately come back and win. Cool. They can ultimately come back and make the playoffs. But what they did at the start is literally having an effect on how they finish and how they need to finish. And it wouldn't be so much doom and gloom, in my opinion. Joe Burrow wouldn't throw the ball 56 times if they didn't need this game. Which brings me to my next point. The last thing I'm going to say about the Bengals before I talk about the Ravens in a second is this. Be wary of success. I've talked about this before, and I will talk about this again. Be wary of success. Be wary of talent. And what I mean by that is, don't let talent blind you from what's really the case. Don't let talent blind you from what you need to do. Joe Burrow is a top 5, you can argue top 3 quarterback in this league. That doesn't mean that you don't address the running position. I understand that you got Khalid Herbert. I get that. But nah. There's a reason why the Bengals are in the position that they're in. Because the front office didn't address the issues that they needed to. We talk about the Cowboys all the time and how Jerry Jones is one of the major reasons why, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, is one of the major reasons why it feels like this season is over for the Cowboys. Management not addressing the one issue that's been an issue the entire time Joe Burrow has been there, which is why he's been hurt a lot of times. Their offensive line is bad. They don't have a good running game. Their defense is spotty. Let me say this. Their run defense is spotty, even though Trey Hendrickson, he's one of the best pass rushers in football. Their secondary is god-awful. But they also had Jesse Bates. Remember that? And then you don't want to pay T. Higgins. And then you make Jamar Chase hold out and essentially not pay him either. The talent of Joe Burrow has blinded people from what really is the case in Cincinnati. And I've been saying this for a minute. This team, this organization is an incompetent organization. Thursday didn't seal it for me. I've been new this. But Thursday was the epitome of everything that you're saying. Joe Burrow plays his heart out. Honestly, you can argue that Joe Burrow was the best player on the field for both teams. I would still say Lamar Jackson, but Joe Burrow, you can argue he was the best player for both teams. When you have a quarterback throw for 428 yards and a running back catch for 264 yards, and you still lose, that tells you everything you need to know about your organization. That doesn't happen. You know who that happens to? Incompetent organizations. An organization that obviously doesn't have everything they need to have. Because mind you, that 428, none of that was in garbage time. The Bengals needed every single play, every single yard. You can talk about the missed holding calls. You can talk about the missed face mask against the Ravens. Cool. I think that in those situations, if it's blatant like it was with the Vikings, you gotta call it. But if it wasn't blatant, now obviously that's subjective as well. I get it. But those non-calls wasn't the thing that lost you this game. What lost you this game is your team is not up to the caliber in which your quarterback is. And it bit you in the end. You could talk about Joe Burrow not throwing to Jamar Chase at the end of the game for the 2-point conversion. When he had one-on-one coverage, he threw it to. But I'm not upset with that. You threw it to a 6'7", 6'8" tight end that was being guarded by a 5'9", 5'10" corner. Like, Joe Burrow just sailed a little bit because he was being pressured. I understand. I probably would have threw it to Jamar. I'm not going to say I would have done anything. I think Jamar Chase was probably the best option there, but I understand throwing it to a 6'7" guy when you have a 5'10" guy guarding him. I get it. But this Bengals team is the epitome of everything that I'll say it like this. If it wasn't for Joe Burrow, we would look at this team as a bottom feeder team. We would look at this team as the incompetent team that it is and that it has been for years. Joe Burrow is just a Band-Aid on a cut that needs extensive stitches. And until that's the case, but I don't think that this organization feels that way, which obviously I get it. But the proof is in the pudding. Incompetent teams lose games like this. And that's no offense. That's, in fact, all the praise in the world for Joe Burrow, because no other team. I'm not saying he's not great, but I don't even think Patrick Mahomes would have been able to play as good as Joe Burrow played last night or played Thursday Night Football. So, and for the Ravens, a lot of things that I said about the Cincinnati Bengals, you could argue can be said about the Ravens. I don't remember who said it, but they were absolutely correct. So this next part isn't essentially me, but I think it's correct. I think it's Mike Tannenbaum that said it. The biggest obstacle for successful teams is retaining talent. And I'm not just saying from players, I mean coaches as well. Let's not forget that the Baltimore Ravens defensive coordinator is a first-time defensive coordinator. And I think 5 to 6 years ago, he was playing on the Baltimore Ravens. When you lose offensive coordinators, when you lose defensive coordinators, you make it to an AFC championship, have a historic defense, and you lose the architect to that defense, is going to be tough. And everything I said about Cincinnati Bengals and their defense can be applied to the Ravens. Outside of the fact of the Ravens have the number one rushing defense and have the absolute worst, dead last, ranked 32nd, worst pass defense. Now, that stat can be a little misleading because you would think, oh, how was that the case? If their running defense is so good and their passing is not. That's not exactly the case. What it is teams understand how bad the Ravens are defensively in the secondary. So they don't feel the need to have to run the ball because they know that they're going to get most of their success from passing. So it's easy being a top-ranked run defense when teams don't run against you because they're having success passing the ball. It's no coincidence that Jameis Winston and the Cleveland Browns very rarely ran the ball and had uber success against the Ravens. The very next week, when they tried to do the same thing, the Chargers weren't having it. I'll say it again and again. I understand names sound really good. Marlon Humphreys, Nate Wiggins, Roquan Smith, Kyle Hamilton, even though he did go out, looks like with a sprained ankle, but I don't know how serious it is. It's okay. Kyle Van Noy. It's okay, and it's good to have names. But you know what's louder than your name? Your stats. And I said this last week. I will continue to say it. This Baltimore Ravens team has aspirations to win a Super Bowl. You have the ultimate anomaly in Lamar Jackson. You have undoubtedly the best running back in the league so far this year. This offense is dynastic. This offense is a juggernaut. Like I said, once Marlon Humphreys caused that turnover and the offense started clicking, it was over. But none of that matters once it gets to the playoffs. If this team, it has 7 weeks. If this team does not improve defensively on that secondary, it doesn't matter. I know that you brought in Tre'Davious White, and he could be a huge piece. But the teams that he was just on, right, needs his services and let him go for essentially nothing. That does not bode confidence with that pick or with that transaction. The Ravens invested heavily on the offense, which is why you're seeing the offense pretty good. Hell, I'm still waiting for Deontay Johnson. He came in, he dropped the ball, or no, he had needed to get a first down and wasn't able to get, or at least out of bounds, he wasn't able to get there, and then he slipped on a play that would have caused a first down. So I'm waiting for him to, I don't know what's going on. Now he's sending cryptic tweets talking about there's two sides of the story. Bro, I don't know. But the Baltimore Ravens invested heavily on the offensive side of the ball. Well, there are going to be some leaks somewhere. And right now, the major leak is their secondary. I understand that it's going to take time. Again, you have a first-time defensive coordinator. But that time is drastically dwindling. Because again, the playoffs is much different than the regular season. You're playing the best of the best. You're playing, it's not we got it next week. It's we have to win. And hell, Marlon Humphreys even said it. We can't keep going out there and giving up 300 plus passing yards. Because trust me, bro, if you have to go up against, let's say, a Patrick Mahomes, and it seems like he's found his number one receiver in DeAndre Hopkins, or you have to go against a CJ Stroud, and he has Nico Collins healthy for the playoffs, or Tank Dell. You have to go against a Josh Allen, and he has Amari Cooper and Keon Coleman. I understand that they beat the Bills earlier this year, but that's going to be tough. Asking this offense that to constantly put up 35 plus points is tough. And it's not 35 points like to be comfortable. They have to put this up to win. That is tough in the playoffs. And then let's say they do make it to the Super Bowl. And this defense is still as wobbly as it is, as much of a hindrance as it is. And let's say they make it to the Super Bowl, and they have to go up against the Lions. That dynastic, that terrific offense that they have. How the hell you think they're going to stop Sam Laporta, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Tim Patrick, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery. How are they going to stop that if they gave up 300 plus yards to Jameis Winston? If they let Jamar Chase, one player, one wide receiver, the wide receiver that they knew was going to go off because T. Higgins wasn't even playing. Jamar Chase goes for 264 yards. What I'm saying is this. Football is the ultimate team sport. And it is true that Lamar Jackson could very well be the biggest anomaly in football. It is true that this offense is incredible and could take them to a Super Bowl. But it's also true that football is the ultimate sport. And you're not winning anything. You're not hoisting the trophy if this defense is as bad as it is. Which is why I was shocked that they didn't go for a pass rusher. Maybe Tre'Davious White is the guy they're looking for, but they don't really have it. Maybe they're waiting for Metabike because he did have 3 sacks on the night. Maybe they're waiting for him to get it going. Because no one's winning a Super Bowl with this defense playing as bad as it is. But we'll see. Shouts out to the Baltimore Ravens for beating the Cincinnati Bengals 35-34. And with that, like I say all the time, Thursday night football is the start of the new week or the start of the new NFL week, which is week 10. So let me give my predictions for week 10, starting with the New York Giants and Carolina Panthers. Both of these teams, and I think it's in Munich. It is in Munich. It's at 9:30. Both of these teams are very much bottom feeders. Both of these teams are pretty much bottom dwellers in the NFL. We're talking about the Carolina Panthers, which you can argue is the worst team in football. This New York Giants team is one of the more disappointing teams in football. I think the issue that both of these teams have is it's increasingly difficult to sell your fan base, sell your team on hope with the decisions that you've made. I understand Malik Neighbors is there for the New York Giants. I get it. I understand Dexter Lawrence is there. And the defense is pretty good. But you've, as an organization, as a front office, it seems like, at least offensively, you've done everything wrong outside of draft Malik Neighbors. From letting Saquon Barkley walk to paying Daniel Jones to paying people like Darius Slate. It's like you consistently make them. It's very hard to wrap your arms about an organization where it seems like every time they have a chance to go right, they go left. Same with the Carolina Panthers. This team has not been relevant since Cam Newton was there. Now, mind you, it had Christian McCaffrey. You had the number 1 overall pick and got Bryce Young. But we've seen, I'm not even saying Bryce Young is as bad as he's putting on tape. What I'm saying is you haven't done anything to help Bryce Young. You take away his piece like DJ Moore. You're constantly taking away, or you're putting incompetence around him. So it's very hard for both of these fan bases to really wrap their arms around this team. Before last week, I don't think Daniel Jones didn't throw a touchdown pass at MetLife for like years. So, yeah, for this game, I'm probably going to go the Giants because I think the Giants are better than the Carolina Panthers, but that's not saying much. That's not saying much, man. I don't think Bryce Young is terrible. I just think that you haven't really given him the right tools to work his magic, and that's tough for anybody. But I'm not, I'm gonna go with the Giants beating the Carolina Panthers in Munich. It looks like the Carolina Panthers are the home team, so I'm gonna go with the Giants. New England at Chicago. Another situation that is tough, man. Look, when you are looked at as the quote-unquote savior of an organization, savior of a franchise, that's a lot of pressure to put on somebody. And while I'm not saying that Caleb Williams isn't good enough for that, I'm not saying that he's welting under the pressure. What I am saying is sometimes your talent is unable to supersede the dysfunction around you. And it seems like this year, the dysfunction has been with the head coaching staff of the Chicago Bears. Not saying that Matt Eberflus, I talked about this before, man. Schemes and play styles work for different quarterbacks. We just talked about, if Lamar Jackson was in the same type of quarterback situation that Joe Burrow was in, I don't think he'd look as good. Vice versa. If Joe Burrow was in the same scheme that the Baltimore Ravens were in, he would not be as good as he was, because that system is built around Lamar Jackson, just like the Cincinnati Bengals system is built around, or it's supposed to be built around, Joe Burrow. It seems like the system that Matt Eberflus is trying to build or trying to run is not suitable for Caleb Williams and his play style. And on top of that, you have, DJ Moore not happy. You have Keenan Allen not happy. It's just, this team is too good to be in the position that they're in. And a lot of that, I believe, is a disconnect. Which is, you have DJ Moore talking about, I don't know if Matt Eberflus is. I want to say no. When they asked him, has Matt Eberflus lost the locker room? That's kind of crazy. I say all that to say, I think the Chicago Bears are better than the New England Patriots, but I don't know. I'm going to go with the Bears because I just think the Patriots damn near won last week because they played a bad team and Drake May was the best player for both teams. But again, last week they played the Titans and lost to the Titans. You lost to Mason Rudolph. I think that Caleb Williams is better than Mason Rudolph. And this defense hasn't really been good in New England, so I'm going to go with the Bears. But I will say, again, I don't think, and I said this last episode, I don't think that they're going to or should fire Matt Eberflus now. I mean, there's only 7 games left for the regular season, which is still a long time, but, But I do not expect him to be here next year. That's all I'm saying. But I do have the Chicago Bears beating New England Patriots. Buffalo at Indianapolis. This is going to be a big game for both teams. I mean, Buffalo, they've all but sealed up the race for the AFC East. This game is going to be, they don't want to lose their footing in the AFC at all, especially when you see some of the teams that are above them. And on top of that, you're playing against Joe Flacco. And Joe Flacco has been much better than Anthony Richardson. But, this defense has been better than I thought they would be, especially after losing someone like DeForest Buckner. But I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills. I know Keon Coleman is not playing. At least it says doubtful. But I think Buffalo is just a better team, especially when you talk about Josh Allen. He's playing at a potential MVP level. I think Amari Cooper should be coming back. So I have Buffalo winning that. And you're playing in a dome. So I think that any quarterback should be better in a dome when you don't have to worry about the elements. So I have Josh Allen beating Indianapolis. Denver at Cincinnati. I think this is a sneaky game because Denver has been much better than advertised this year. And you're going up against this defense has been really good. The offense, Bo Nix, he has moments. But I don't think that they're going to beat the Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City. The relationship between Patrick Mahomes and DeAndre Hopkins continues to grow and continues to get better. Again, I said this last episode. This team doesn't feel unbeaten or doesn't feel beatable, but it is unbeaten. So I just don't think Denver struggled with the Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals. What in the world? This Denver team struggled with the Baltimore Ravens last week, and they're about to go up against a better defense at least. I'm going to go with Kansas City Chiefs, and they're playing at Kansas City. I think Denver could win. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think they will. So Atlanta at New Orleans. It is a crapshoot in New Orleans right now, and it's not good, like, at all. And Atlanta is just a better team than New Orleans. They just fired their head coach and Dennis Allen. I don't trust him at all anymore, so I have Atlanta beating New Orleans. Next, you have San Francisco at Tampa Bay. Again, I will say this. Tampa Bay has been much better than I thought they would be this year, and they were much better than I thought they would be after losing Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Now, obviously, Mike Evans is not a season-long injury. I don't know when he'll be back, but you're going up against the San Francisco 49ers team that has struggled mightily, at least defensively, with consistency. But they are getting Christian McCaffrey back. I think the 49ers are on upset alert. I think that Baker Mayfield this year has played better than Brock Purdy. And with Christian McCaffrey coming back, I don't know how much he's going to affect the game, seeing as though he's missed so much time. And you're playing in Tampa Bay, and Tampa Bay played the Chiefs really well till the end, obviously. I'm going to go with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers beating the San Francisco 49ers. I think that San Francisco overall is a better team, but right now the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are playing better than them, in my opinion. So I'm going to go with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Pittsburgh at Washington. I think that this is a huge game for both teams. For the Pittsburgh Steelers, this is a huge game because if you look at all the teams that Russell Wilson has beat as the starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers, they've all been teams that do not have a winning record. So you're playing against a team that is one of the top teams in the NFC right now. This is a proving ground game. Now, I do think that the Pittsburgh Steelers have the formula that could beat the Washington Commanders. Washington struggles, or at least of recent, they've struggled with stopping the run. And Najee Harris has been really well these past few weeks. And on top of that, Marshawn Lattimore probably is not going to play. So you still have opportunities with George Pickens and now Mike Williams. For Washington, this is yet another game. You almost lost it took a Hail Mary to beat the Bears. And Pittsburgh is projected to be a better team than the Bears, obviously, record-wise. And this defense is ferocious for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it's really going to what's his name? Jaden Daniels is really going to be tested, and this offensive line. I'm going to ride with my Washington Commanders. I wouldn't be upset nor be shocked if they lose this game, but I think that Washington they're at home. They're playing on a level that we haven't seen in a while. And Pittsburgh, it's going to be a tough game, but I'm going to go with Washington. Minnesota at Jacksonville. Jacksonville is not that good of a team, especially defensively. Yeah, you have moments where Trevor Lawrence has looked like the Trevor Lawrence that earned the paycheck that he got. But Nah. Christian Kirk's out for the season. Gabe Davis is, I think, questionable. And this defense is terrible. And you're going against a Minnesota team that has a lot to prove. Well, not a lot to prove, but they do have one of the best defenses in football. And you're going against Jettas, which, I mean, Justin Jefferson, I'm going to go with Minnesota. I think Minnesota is just a better overall team than the Jaguars, and they're going to show it. Tennessee at Chargers. The Chargers, they beat on bad teams. And I'm not saying beat on as far as like destroy. No, they just win these games. And I don't think the Chargers, they are like 5-3 right now, so their record is pretty good. But Tennessee, I don't think Tennessee is gonna really fare much of a challenge for them. Now the Chargers challenge comes further because they still have to go against the Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals. But for right now, I don't think Mason Rudolph or Will Levis, whoever starts, I don't think they're good enough to beat this Chargers defense. So I'm gonna go with the Chargers. Philadelphia at Dallas. Dallas season is probably over with the injury to Dak Prescott. They're saying that he could be out minimum for 4 weeks, maximum 10 weeks. I think at this point, when you get closer to the 4-week period and this team is 0-4 or this team isn't that good, I don't see why you rush him back. And you're going against a Philadelphia team that is a Super Bowl caliber team, or they feel they are. They have the roster to be. I think Philadelphia is gonna just hand Dallas a mighty ass whooping. I'm not gonna lie to you. Cooper Rush ain't doing it. Now, I do think it was interesting, the conversation around this team this week as to why Trey Lance isn't starting. And that to me is a good question. You trade for him. He was a high first round draft pick. I don't know why he's not playing, but hey, I have Philadelphia beating Dallas. The Jets at Arizona. Now, this game is a sneaky good game and a good matchup for the Cardinals. The Cardinals' defense has been much better than advertised. Their offense still is a little shaky, but you're going up against a Jets team that they're not mathematically out of the playoffs yet, but they need more help than the Cincinnati Bengals. They need some help. And I still don't trust this offense. I still don't trust this defense. I'm going to go with the Arizona Cardinals. You're playing at home. Kyler Murray, and the connection with Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison is getting better. There's still a lot of dysfunction, it seems like, with the Jets. And again, the Cardinals have played much better than I thought they would. I'm going to go with the Cardinals. Detroit at Houston. I'm going to tell you something. If Houston's offensive line is god-awful. And while Detroit does struggle with the pass rush, and I don't think Zadarius Smith is going to play this week, defensively, Houston is a good defensive team, but I don't know how they're going to be able to slow down all the weapons that this Lions team has, on top of, on the defensive side of the ball, trying to keep the defenders from getting to C.J. Stroud. They struggle doing that against the Jets, and the Lions are a much better team. And you still don't have Nico Collins. I don't think the connection, I don't think just having Tank Dell and Dalton Schultz is going to carry this team to victory. So I have the Detroit Lions beating the Houston Texans on Sunday Night Football. I don't see how the Texans can handle the type of pressure that the Detroit Lions can bring them. And on Monday Night Football, you have Miami at LA. I think that LA is a team that, if they make the playoffs, which is a big if, looking at their record and the road that they have to get to, they can make some noise. Miami's kind of reeling right now. I know you have Tua back, but the defense isn't playing that well. The offense really isn't playing that well. You just lost to Buffalo. And while LA is still dealing with every injury under the sun, Puka Nacua is back. Cooper Rush is back. And if you have Cooper Rush, Puka Nacua, and Matthew Stafford, it seems like LA has a shot. And I'm gonna go with the Rams. I just Matthew Stafford is playing much better than Tua right now, and I just feel even though they should have probably won against the Seahawks or should have lost against the Seahawks last week, I think that the Rams are playing better than the Dolphins. So I have the Rams winning that. And, yeah, those are my predictions. The teams on a bye week is the Packers, the Raiders, the Seahawks, and the Browns. So I think this is going to be an interesting week, and I'm excited. So we will see. And lastly, before we go, we have the unpopular topic of the day. When you make a purchase, when you invest in something, the number one thing that you hope is that you're getting a return on investment. You're hoping that whatever you're paid for or whatever you invested in equals out to whatever you put into it. It is very early. Very early. But all of the signs and all of the concerns that we had for the Philadelphia 76ers are being realized early and right before our eyes. This team obviously was built around Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and now Paul George. Early in the season, we have not seen all three of them play together. Obviously, we knew that Joel Embiid was going to miss some time. We didn't know it was going to be this long. Paul George came in hurt, obviously, with the hyperextended knee that he had in the preseason. And now Tyrese Maxey is going to miss a couple weeks with a hamstring injury. This is the fear that you have when you invest in something that has shown time and time again that it may not be as reliable as possible. Look, I'm not saying that Paul George is probably a future Hall of Famer. I'm going to say leaning towards definitely a future Hall of Famer. Right now, no, but I don't. Obviously, his career is not ending. I think that if he continues to be as great as he is, Joel Embiid is a future Hall of Famer. Tyrese Maxey is when playing, is one of the best offensive weapons in basketball. But when you invest so much money into players that have a history of injury and a history of unavailability, this is the issues that you run into. Yes, albeit it is early, and you rather all these issues happen now than in the playoffs or close to the playoffs. I understand that. But it is disheartening when you see the issues that you are hoping not to run into, you're running into them early. It is early. And we're still trying to figure out. We still have yet to see their big three on the court. That's why when I did my NBA preseason, I didn't factor in the 76ers because you're building a foundation on an already shaky ground. And the foundation that you're building is not sturdy. I think when healthy, Paul George is a top 10-ish player. Obviously, when healthy, Joel Embiid is a top 5 to 3 player. But that when healthy part is major for both of them. And you didn't build this team to be carried by Tyrese Maxey, who will also not be there now for a few weeks. I don't see much success for this Philadelphia team if this is the year that we're going to get. And which is unfortunate because I'm not going to say the East is wide open because it is not. I think that you have a big dog right now in the Boston Celtics that look damn near unbeatable, even though they did lose to Golden State Warriors the other night, but they didn't have Jaylen Brown or Porzingis. But outside of that, there's a lot of question marks with every other. There's a lot of question marks with the Knicks. There's a lot of question marks with the Bucks. And there's a lot of question marks with the Philadelphia 76ers. And while you would want these issues to happen now, then closer to the playoffs, the fact that this is already an issue shouldn't bold confidence. Just saying. And there you have it. That's been today's episode of the Unpopular Podcast. I truly, truly appreciate you guys. If you want an Unpopular Podcast shirt, hoodie, sweater, long sleeve joggers, the link is in the description below. I have multiple different colors, multiple different designs. Get your Unpopular Podcast merch today. Also, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm trying to get as many subscribers as possible. I appreciate all of you guys. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to subscribe if they're not. And if you like the content and you get this far, I don't know why you're not subscribed. I don't know what to tell you, bro. So please subscribe. Also, please follow the socials. Actually, no. Let's back up. For all my DSP listeners, that is Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, please follow wherever you're listening. It definitely means a lot. No platform is more important than the other to me. All of the people that support me, I appreciate. So if you are listening on the DSPs and you have not subscribed or followed, please do that. Now, if you... Please follow the socials. Follow Instagram, follow TikTok. I post pretty much daily, whether we talk about reels, whether we talk about stories. You can go back and forth in the comments and debate. That's probably the quickest way to debate with me. I appreciate all of you guys. If you keep it respectful, I don't mind going back and forth. It just means not only that you're listening to me, but that you're passionate about whatever you're talking about. Please follow the socials. It means a lot. Until next time, much love.